Wow.
Why?
So remember that the sort of the theme of this, the young centaur exalting in sort of young love, and the old centaur being tormented by love. The idea, I guess, is that he is sort of bound by this Cupid figure that would be sitting on his back, who is tugging his ear. We'll look at it in a little more detail on some slides, but there would be this idea that this Cupid figure is sort of tormenting the old centaur versus sort of joyously frolicking with the young centaur. But another thing that came up when you talked about the two, why do they have two tails, also look for supports. So out of pure structural necessity, the most obvious thing on these is this tree trunk that they're sort of sitting on, right? The two centaurs, at least. The red faun, it's a little more blended in because it's just next to him. But these supports were necessary, as I mentioned earlier. The marble is extremely dense and heavy, so you need, especially because these are being carved out of a single block of stone, a lot of the weight is being supported by that tree trunk, this sort of ridiculous looking prop that is just stuck under the mid portion of the horse part of the centaur. If this were bronze, as we saw with the Chimera, with that Artemisian Poseidon or Zeus, you don't need those supports because bronze is much lighter. So it won't collapse under its own weight, basically. So especially if you look in their hair and on their tails and their feet, you'll be able to see these struts or these supports that are there purely for structural integrity, really. Some possible break points in this that they noticed.
Is the head of the goat
Yep.
broken off?
Yeah.
The leg?
The leg of the faun or the leg of the goat?
The faun.
Yeah, which, if you could point with your controller, where do you sort of think? Yep, exactly.
The arm.
Yep.
Was his foot broken off?
Yes. So basically, both his legs, really. See this dark gray sort of veining in the marble for his legs?
Oh, yeah.
So that doesn't continue. Remember, these are all carved out of a single block of marble. So the veining is the term for this sort of coloration within the marble. That should be continuous throughout all parts of this. But we see that gray veining kind of stops right at his hips on one leg and right about mid-thigh on the other. That's because the legs in their entirety are restorations down to his ankles, really. So, yeah.
Is the tree on the side as well?
Yep, yeah. As well as the lower part of his sort of shepherd's crook, the lower part of the animal skin. I see somebody gesturing there, yep. And somebody also correctly pointed out the arm. So these parts, these sort of fragile parts that would readily snap off when this fell.
What are the things on its neck?
Good point. Look at the neck of the goat and see if you notice any similarities there.
It has the same.
Yeah, those are called wattles, which are kind of like, I don't know, you know how roosters have those sort of frocks or, I forget what they're called on roosters, but those kind of fleshy ornaments. I think they're similar to that.
They're wattles, I think.
Yeah. Do you know what the purpose of them is, though?
I think it's like cooling. I think a little bit is how they use it. I'm not sure the exact word.
Interesting.
So when they found the sculpture, they didn't have the arms or the legs. How did they know how to reconstruct them?
Well, yeah, that's the question. So in most instances, you might have, because the Romans were great fans of making copies. Basically, remember I talked about these sort of workshops that could churn out like lawn ornaments, basically. So in the case of the Amazon, the Amazon statue type, you might have numerous examples in various states of preservation of each type. For the red faun, there's perhaps that one from the Vatican might have been used as an analogy. Or if they find the feet and the pedestal and they have his torso and his head, judging on these sort of fragments that we can kind of imagine maybe are floating in space, a skilled artist would be able to interpolate the missing parts. There's even some parts on the faun where they might have just had a chunk that they've inserted into a particular spot. The centaurs were in a better condition when they were found. The faun, though, definitely, yes. Like, why is the arm raised like that? Well, probably based on the position of his shoulder, if we look here on the back. But we can also see on the back, at the break point, it's filled in quite a bit with this sort of plaster-looking fill. So if you look at the back of his shoulder, you can see that there.
So like that birthmark looking thing over here?
Let's see. Let me get over there. The line.
Oh, you mean the line?
Oh no, the line I think is just a scratch. I was talking about this right here.
Okay.
See that sort of, that patch?
Australia.
Yeah. That's kind of like a patch of fill that they didn't have, or the ancient element had a chunk missing, so they sort of just fill it in with this similar colored filling. And also his hand from here down is restored. So that's probably based on, you know, the position of his arm.
Is this like over on the young centaur on the back side near the leg? There's like a similar sort of hair pattern. Is that like representational of hair, or is it?
Good question. So somebody knew what wattles were.
That was me.
Do you know animal sort of physiognomy?
Not greatly. No.
So there are things like this, these sort of whorls or burls of fur in certain spots. Another one, let me see if I can see it on here. Actually, it might be on the old centaur. There's on the old centaur, yeah. So if you come over to the old centaur, on the inside of his front left foot, or front left leg, do you see that sort of, it looks almost like an amoeba, but I think it's supposed to be like a
little bump out.
Yeah, swirl of fur, or I'm not sure what, but maybe if somebody knows animal.
So it's just kind of them trying to add that next layer of realism.
Yeah, exactly. So very, and these again are in that Hellenistic style, that kind of emotive, sort of naturalistic extremely realistic, but also, if you look at their faces, they're very expressive. Body language very contorted and dynamic. They're very much not the sort of staid, rigid sculptures of the archaic and the classical. So actually, I just noticed this. Anybody, if you look at the back of the old centaur, I've actually never noticed this before until now. What do you think is being used to tie his hands up?
Here.
Maybe. It looks like it from over there, so in a sense you're right, but you have to look at it from this angle in order to see the relationship.
Is it like the tail of the pelt or whatever?
Yeah, I think it's the tail of the leopard skin, which would make sense for the hair part because the wispy hair of it is sort of trailing down the other side.
Yeah, especially because the face is up over there with the front and everything. So
Yeah, and there's this sort of loop of the tail going under his, the hand sticking out there. I've literally never noticed that before. And I've looked at this hundreds of times, this statue.
that's interesting. Kind of works with the Dionysus thing
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, and the kind of sort of playfulness and triviality, it's sometimes called, of the Hellenistic. So they'll include little, I don't know, jokes or puns like this. And I thought I had put the Cupid Eros figure in here, but I don't see it. But it would be sitting on, is it in your guys? Maybe I put the wrong one on mine.
Nope.
No. Interesting. Okay. Oh well. But it would be sitting right here. I can show you when we get back to. So basically, he would be sitting here, kind of reaching up and pulling on the hair of the, or at least reaching for the hair of the old centaur.
Wow.
Why? To, I guess, with keeping in this with this theme of sort of exalting in love or being tormented by being in love, this Cupid figure presumably is the one who's tied up his hands with the tail of the leopard skin, and then is just kind of annoying him or tormenting him by pulling on his hair and sort of making him contort into this pose.
Huh.